Hi, I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we all have so many transitions in our life, and I like to use the metaphor of triathlon, something I've been doing for 13, 14 years. And when you're in a triathlon, first you swim, and then you transition, and then you get on the bicycle, and then you transition, and then you get in the running mode. So we're all having different things in our lives, and we have a fascinating person today, somebody I've known for a very long time in Nashville, John Rowley. And John is what do we call, a political campaign expert. There's probably a much better way to explain it, but let John explain it. John, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
It's good to see you.
Tell us what you do and what you've been doing for many years, and you can explain it a lot better than me.
Sure. And I mean, in some arenas, I'm seen as a political media consultant. So I make campaign ads for candidates to run for office or other ads. And in some cases, I'm a public relations crisis management consultant, where a company or a high-profile sports figure or someone else has a problem they're trying to keep out of the news, or something that's coming down the pike that they need to deal with in the world of social media and 24/7 news. And then, you know, I kind of live in three different realms. I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner for over 20 years, so I'm an entrepreneur. Most of my personal network and friends that inspire me are entrepreneurial. I'm a creative person. I write, I make commercials, I use TV, video, whether it's on television or online or on the radio, to communicate messages for candidates and others. So I live in the world of creativity and production people. And then you know, a lot of my time is in the realm of politics, helping elect people to Congress, working with the people who are on their staffs or campaign staffs. So the creative world, the political world, and the entrepreneurial world are kind of, I'm at the nexus of those three, for good or for ill. So.
Wow. It seems very, very exciting and very stressful, but also you just started your own company just lately.
Right. I was in business with a guy named Bill Fletcher, who was a great mentor to me, got me in the business, you know, 26 years ago, though I've now come to, with a lot of the millennials and others, it's not cool to have done anything for more than 9 years. So I just say over 9 years is how long I've been doing this. But yeah, and so as he and I amicably unwound our business a few years ago, I kind of restarted. I kind of had the first whiteboard moment of my career where the slate's clean. I could go this way or that way, and I really have created something that's not radically different than what I've been doing before, you know, a little more digitally focused, a little more about advocacy as opposed to corporate advertising and things like that. But I still love what I do. I mean, you know, campaigns and political campaigns are challenging, but it's also never boring, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes for ill, and but I still love doing it. So.
Wow. So if somebody comes to you, do you interview them as much as, because what if you only work with Democrats, right?
Right.
If it's political, and if somebody says some things that you don't particularly like, are you still going to hire yourself out to them?
Sure.
Or?
I mean, I've worked with probably 500 candidates, so part of my job is,
Wow.
before I even get in the room with somebody, I need to have figured out if they're my sort of person, whether that's ethics or ideology, or sometimes it's more just practical. Are we going to be able to work together or not? I mean, a political campaign is Darwinian. It is intense. So you're just going into the pool of piranhas. So, I mean, we have to work, we have to operate at a high level together. It's a startup company. We start up, we raise this money, we spend it, we win or lose within 6 months or 16 months usually. So a lot of times it's like, are we a good cultural fit? The same sort of thing in the private sector. You'd say, hey, we're going to pre-qualify our customers to make sure they're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for them. So.
Wow, so it's kind of like a mini marriage that you know has a beginning, and you know it's going to have an end at the election, and you are putting a whole team together to make this candidate win.
Right. Oh, yeah, often we're putting the team together now, and you know, usually they're long-term relationships, but they're sporadic, because even if somebody's a member of Congress or a legislator and they have an election every couple years, they don't have an election every couple years that's contested every year in and year out. So we're constantly, we need new projects and new people to work with, because it's a rare client that year in and year out they need help, because elections are periodic and contested elections are sometimes rare. And sometimes we do our job too well and they get in, and for 10 years they're unopposed. And there's an old Will Rogers saying, you run for political office in one of two ways. You run unopposed or you run scared. And when you're a political consultant, it's not very good business when they run unopposed. But anyway, it's good for them though. So.
Wow. Now let's dial back to your beginnings, and tell us about your beginnings in high school, and I believe sports may have helped you in some way?
Well, I mean, both my parents were public school teachers. My father was a history teacher, a very creative father, and so it's his fault I kind of wended my way around to losing sight and then finding again my passion for doing things around politics and government and whatnot. And then my mom was very pushy and demanding and had high standards. I entered a speech contest one time, and I still to this day remember I had written something, and the way I had recorded it myself on a little tape recorder, she did not think was satisfactory, and so she kind of got me to take it to the next level, and I ended up winning that contest. And now I write speeches like that for people, and so that was a very influential thing to me.
Was that in high school?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, and just so extraordinarily supportive parents on any creative or academic or athletic pursuit I had. And then in my mind to this day, though, my pursuits are maybe not as glorious as your previous guest and whatnot, but I mean, I'm still kind of a jock at heart. I was a standout basketball player, one of the best teams in the entire state of Illinois. I'm still
Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Tell us how that influenced you.
I mean, the first time I ever picked up a basketball, I loved it, and so I'm
And you
very.
were how old?
Yeah, probably, well, 2. I mean, my father was a coach, and so he would take me to the gym, and I could dribble all the way up and down the court at age 2. He would say, with left hand and right hand, and so
both ways.
Yeah, and then the real thing though that is with me today, and I was good. I worked extraordinarily hard, very disciplined, and all of those things translate today. But also, I was on an exceptional group of people. I mean, there's a saying that you are who you spend time around, and that whole team of people I'm still very close to. And I grew up in a town there's a high school of about 150 kids in the high school, and
oh my heavens,
and
that's all?
of the people in my class, of the people on that team, I mean, about half of the, a number of medical doctors, a number of healthcare entrepreneurs, and other entrepreneurs, some standout people in the military, and so I was in a great group of people, and so I just think I'm very grateful and fortunate for that as well, and so yeah, I mean, it's sometimes campaign teams are almost as good as those great basketball teams, but it's still not quite at the high of just sticking it to somebody at a basketball game. And I still play a little bit to this day, so occasionally at the YMCA I have a peak of those moments still. So.
Wow. And then is that high school part, is that where you learned to be competitive? And did that help you? Because, I mean, winning elections, that's totally competitive.
Yeah. I mean, I like what I do, because when I played, I had, I think, about 7 chances to make a game-winning shot, and I was 7 or free throws, and I made all of them, and from when I was little to high school, and so you don't get you don't get a chance to do you don't get a chance to do that anymore. So in a political campaign is as close as you get, as it's a week from the election, and they need a commercial, and they've got to throw the ball to somebody, and so there's the pressure, and it's on you, and it's the most public part of the campaign, and it's maybe this is just a fantasy I've created, but it's as close as you get to game-winning shots in public life and professional life that I've found, and so I'm better under pressure than I am in times of peace and calm. If I have 6 months to work on something, I'll be great the last 6 weeks or 6 days of it. So whether it's crisis management or campaigns, that pressure is something that's important to. It's almost important to the creative process for me too. So.
Mm-hmm. Now you give us an idea too, when you were in college and you were trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do? And I think you gave a story about your persistence in calling Mr. Fletcher, who became a partner. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of college, everybody that had my degree was going into pharmaceutical sales. It was
And your degree was what?
It's like corporate and organizational communication, just kind of a business and communication degree, and I just was like, I mean, nothing against anybody that go into that field, but I was going to keep waiting tables for years before I would
you were a waiter.
Go right to pay my way through school. I don't know that I was any acclaimed waiter or anything, but so yeah, I just kept, and I'd come back to this passion to do something politically. I wanted to have my own business, I think, and I kept asking people, and one professor finally heard me, and I'm grateful to him to this day. He and I are still close to this day, and he gave me the business card of this guy who, he said, this guy makes political commercials for a living. And he had just helped defeat David Duke in the governor's race of Louisiana. And I'm like, political commercials? I didn't even know that was a job. This is before Talking Head TV. And so I took that business card back to my dorm room, and I called. I called and called and called, didn't hear back from him, and one day he calls me and he goes, is this John Rowley? And I say, yes, and it's Bill Fletcher, who I ended up in business with, and he says, you must be the most persistent SOB that I've ever run into, because you've called me 12 times, and I'm now calling you back. And so anyway, that opened the door to a whole world of political consulting and just doing things I never would have imagined I'd have the opportunity to do, working with people I never would have imagined. And so, I mean, he gave me a great collaborator, mentor, and I'm super grateful for him. And that we
you became a partner.
Yeah, within a few years. I was one of the youngest partners in the business, period.
You were 26?
25, 26. I was out going against the people who'd kind of invented the business, had elected presidents in their mid-60s, and so I still like to think of myself as a young Turk in the business, but I don't know, I can't really claim that ground as much anymore. So.
Wow,
yeah.
Wow. So I get it, the political thing, and I didn't understand that you also could do a sports figure if there was an impropriety, or you're trying to go, well, how do you handle this in the media? Mm-hmm. Do you do much of that, and are you allowed to kind of vaguely say some examples?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of that sort of work. I do a little bit of it. It's in politics. It's inherent. Every political campaign has a crisis. So there are hundreds and hundreds of political crises I've dealt with. I mean, one in particular I worked with. The first person in the NFL after Ray Rice had a domestic abuse problem. The first player charged with any sort of domestic abuse problem was a player that I did some work with. I was confident he had not done it. You know, he was not in a relationship. He had not hit anybody. He had taken iPhone footage of it. But he had a number of problems. TMZ had some other video of him in a fight on a beach, and his $11.3 million roster bonus was due if he was still on the team. And so I did some things to help him stay on the team until he could get his roster bonus, and so, you know, it was a guy that played with the New Orleans Saints. And so it was interesting, but also, some of the work, even if you have wrongly been accused of domestic violence, it's at some point, things like that, it's not my life's work to get people out of those situations. So I like more of the campaigns, or then there are whole campaigns we work on that are on issues for an organization or a company when they're trying to advance something in the public sphere, whether it's Medicaid expansion or something around education, and so those are different sorts of political campaigns. I feel a little bit more like my life's work as opposed to some of the crisis management projects. So, yeah.
And then tell us about some of the highlights of the political campaigns, and tell us the amazing percentage of the people you work with, how many you actually get elected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in terms of electoral politics, it's around 90%, and then
That's extraordinary. 90% of, I would hire you in a minute.
Well, it means we've been good. We've also probably been fortunate. We've also probably picked some of the right people to work with. So I think, the advice I give everybody in any arena is be good and be lucky. And if you can do that every time, you'll probably be all right. So I don't sniff at any of those three phases of the game. So.
So tell me again what some highlighted campaigns that you can talk about
Mm-hmm.
that, so we
It's all public record if I've worked on them, so I can talk
yeah.
about all
All
the
right,
political
well,
stuff. So yeah.
What's some of your favorite ones?
Right. Well, I would say the favorite ones may not be the sexiest projects. I mean, some of the sexiest things I've been involved in were not that interesting or gratifying. I mean, I made some commercials and spent time with Leonard Nimoy. Like, I was a huge Star Trek fan. Did things with Magic Johnson and did things with, I met Larry Bird, my childhood basketball idol, who is not a great conversationalist at all. So
but he
things,
can play basketball.
yeah, things like that weren't very satisfying. The things that I found most satisfying, there's a person that's the mayor of St. Petersburg, Florida, longtime personal friend of mine.
Wow.
When he ran for mayor, if he would have asked my opinion, I probably would have said don't run because he was 35 points behind. We helped him come back, win, defeat the incumbent mayor. He runs for re-election. He starts 15 points behind, which means he's almost DOA, and we helped him come back and win that race. So that was super satisfying because it was really hard, and we really needed all of our personal chops. And he's a friend. And then similar instance, there's somebody I'd worked with but never worked for her, a woman named Joyce Beatty that ran for Congress. It's the opportunity to have the first African American in that area of Ohio in Congress. I loved Joyce as a person, ran into her, and she said, I think I may run for Congress. There's a new district. And I remember sitting there saying, that would be just like the best thing to elect Joyce. Oh, it's probably never going to happen. I have no idea what Joyce is talking about. But a similar situation, she was 30 points behind, had 70 days to run the campaign. The entire campaign began with her husband, Otto, me, and her sitting down and saying, okay, how are we going to do this? And she's in Congress this day, has spoken at the last couple conventions, super close to Speaker Pelosi, and just, the sort of person you're just proud to have said you helped get there. And in both instances, if they weren't such fabulous communicators, public servants, they would have had no chance. But I also think I made a pretty big difference in those campaigns too. So just because I helped someone win doesn't mean I made a huge difference, but I think I was a difference maker for them. So.
Yes, well, you can be the best soul in the world, but unless it can be conveyed,
right.
And these people like Larry Bird may not be as articulate. Would he run for office? Probably not.
I don't think so.
But it's getting the right people in front of the camera and the social media and all that.
Right.
I also wanted to highlight when I first met you 30 years ago?
No, it was
25?
Over
like
9.
that.
It was over 9 years.
Over 9 years ago. I was reading Utne Reader, and you could say, yes, I want to be in an intellectual salon, to go and talk about things. And it was well, you explain how we met.
Yeah, well, they had ads. If you wanted to be in a salon, an intellectual discussion group, then I don't remember, somehow you contacted the magazine, and there was a group here, and you were the leader of the group. So I got involved, and we had a crazily diverse group of people that would come together.
Yeah, didn't know each other at all.
Yeah, it was truly a hodgepodge team, and it was an interesting way to get involved in Nashville, and it was. You and I have stayed in touch since then, and so anyway, it was just there's nothing really like it, being involved in a salon, and God knows in this day and age, no matter what your partisan leaning, it seems like we could use a few more thoughtful, tame, over tea salon discussions like we used to have in your apartment at Belmont.
Yes, yes, indeed. And way back then, I know you had like a little brother, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us about that, and what ever happened to the little brother, and do you still have little brothers?
Right. Well, I've got 2 biological brothers. Big brothers, big sisters is probably what you're talking about. I did a couple. I mentored 2 different littles, as they would call them back in the big brothers, big sisters. One for 7 years and one for 9. One of them was at a gathering the other night where you and I ran into each other, and it's. I learned a lot. I don't know that a lot of those stories are the storybook brochure stories where it's like someone starts here, you come in their life, and their world changes. It's uneven. They wouldn't need somebody if it wasn't uneven. So they're both doing pretty well. We're still in touch. We've had periods where we were out of touch, and but I strongly recommend it to people who who have the time to do that sort of thing. It was a rich thing in my life, and hopefully I can continue to be a resource in their life. And one of them, Tim, who was my first little brother, when he and I were getting reconnected a few years ago, he just got through auto diesel school, and he was talking about how there's a younger girl in his life who he's trying to mentor, and he goes, that's kind of my paying it forward sort of thing. So that was, he's had an interesting journey, but that made me feel pretty good. So, but I don't know that I would consider myself by any stretch a wildly successful big brother, but I did the best I could for 9 years. So.
Well, I think you stuck it out, and you just never know what the rest of the story will be, and you were a wonderful example. And do you have somebody in your life now that you're?
I'm not actively mentoring as much as I travel now, and it's but I did it for 9 years when I was kind of in my 20s and 30s.
Right, because I remember you talking about that, and I think that's really a
well,
good thing.
And when you're thinking about giving back, one thing that the Big Brothers folks taught me so well is to own the self-interest part of whatever good you're trying to do, because you're going to be even more motivated if you're getting out of it. If you don't get as much out of mentoring as you feel like you're putting into it, you're probably not going to keep doing it. And so that may sound like a selfish comment, but I thought it was a very self-aware piece of coaching that they gave me. And as I pursue other things, the scholarships and other things I like to try to do some good, that I follow my passion. There's a lot of ways to make a difference still to try to follow a passion, and so that was I'm grateful for the Big Brothers program for what they taught me about how to give back. So,
right.
Yeah.
And then with your new company, and your company name is?
It's Counterpoint Messaging.
Okay. And then I saw your kind of debut a week or two ago at Marathon Village. That's where your offices are.
Right.
And then you had your staff all there, and they were delightful ladies that were probably under 30. And I found that very interesting that back in the day, you were 26 years old, but nobody was a partner in a firm. And here you are, you have your own firm, and you're hiring women millennials. And why are you doing that?
Well, I mean, they all happen to be the right person for the job, but also a lot of the target audience of the things we're doing are targeted at women as well. So there's some intentionality, and there's some just those are the best people I could find as well. And but I mean, the political campaign world is driven by young, ambitious people, 22 to 35, and so it's kind of always been that way. But so I definitely have a lot of experience. And then my wife is a fantastic executive coach, leadership coach, so she always has a ton of insight into how to lead any team, especially between generations. And I don't know if I'll get this quote right. So anyway, she's a great resource, and one of the reasons I've been very successful
should have her on TV.
In business. Oh yeah.
Yay.
And but there's a great quote, and it goes something like, "This generation is disrespectful of their elders, and they are they're leading our society down toward hell, and it's just, I'm very concerned about the future of our society, and it's Socrates, so right. I mean so it's like every generation thinks the next generation is taking our society to hell in a handbasket. So anyway, I try not to pile on too much, because I'm sure I was insufferable when I was 20, in my 20s. So.
Insufferable, because you knew it all.
I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, do you have any, in your wisdom, any advice to anybody who would like to go in your path? How would they go about it? Would they pester you? Or
yeah, probably. I mean, I've never really seen anybody get into trouble by being persistent, as long as it's not rude. So I think I'm involved in a lot speaking and training, and I'm involved in a New Leaders Council, which is a young progressive leader organization. And I tell that story to all of anybody I train, and I say, hey, I'll be glad to be helpful, but if you think you're just going to send me an email, and after I've told you the story of you've got to be persistent, 12th time was the charm of me making phone calls, you've got to be a little more persistent. You've got to want it a little bit more. And so I think persistence is key. I think you've got to follow if you follow your talent and passion, hopefully the money will follow. I made a number of decisions in my career that were opportunity versus money, and I went opportunity, and eventually the other side of it came. And so
opportunity versus money. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that may not be true in every industry, but if you want to work in political campaigns, you need to be around political campaigns, whether you volunteer or whether you work in a paid staff capacity, because political campaigns are startup entities that have way more work that needs to be done than they can afford to pay usually. So there's all sorts of things you can be involved in. You could start stuffing envelopes one day, and then you could be helping with policy the next, or you could be writing or doing something with social media. And I was just with somebody the other day in Montgomery, Alabama. His first position was he was the driver for a member of Congress, and he's now at a highly placed political position in a law firm. There are a lot of people who are members of Congress that began as drivers for members of Congress, and so just to be political campaigns, there is a true meritocracy in that way.
Meritocracy?
You can literally just knock on the door and get in. Now, government, some areas of corporate America aren't always that way. You have to distinguish a political campaign versus a congressional office or a government agency. But a political campaign, they need a lot of things done. And so if you're really interested, half the people I'll bet you know around politics, that might be how they got to where they are. They just got involved because they felt strongly about the issue or this industry or a candidate, and they got involved.
They got involved, and you're certainly involved. And do you have a whole list of people that are on the horizon that you will be working with too?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to elect, believe it or not, the first African-American mayor of Montgomery, Alabama. They've never had a black mayor. We're trying to, right now, sell more beer to Mormons in Utah. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, you're doing that?
We have some different candidates in Pennsylvania and Louisiana and Mississippi that we're also working with. And so, yeah, just for 2019, we probably have 15 different campaigns, either on issues or for political candidates that we're going to be working for. So,
wow, and you can just see what's on the horizon and gathering. And does everybody get elected at the same time?
It's all on a different calendar. There's always an election going on, somewhere. So, like next month, Chicago has their elections. In April, there are different elections. So, in the mayoral and non-federal calendar, almost every month there are elections happening. So
wow.
The law says we have to have them. So.
And I see, again, the parallels with, there's the basketball game, there's the playoffs. I can see that in the political campaigns, and you are out there and you are revved up, and the final deal is the election. And then but there might still be, we protest the election.
Right, yeah.
It sounds like you have a very exciting career, and it's delightful to tell the world what you do for a living. So I want to thank you for agreeing to be on our show.
Thanks for inviting me. It's fun to see you, and this is a great program. You always have such a soulful presence, and you're seeking out. I don't know if I qualify, but you're always seeking out good subjects and soulful people. So I'm proud of what you've done.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit.